I've been putting bad guys away for 44 years. I've been part of investigating over 1,000 deaths. I've been a part of putting more than 400 murders in prison, and I'm still at it. I'm Tim Corbett. These are my cases. This isn't your typical criminal profile podcast. This is Killer Catchers. Tonight with me is Gary Mullins, a police officer, Tim Wiley, Sarah, the mother of our victim, Tyler Hurtle, and Terry. This podcast is going to be a lot different than other ones that you've seen or heard about. We're actually going to have police officers and victims' families participate in this. This whole thing to me is about Tyler Hurtle. It's not about the guys that we arrested. It's not about the guys that are doing prison time for this. It's about Tyler Hurtle. Tyler Hurtle was a victim. That's a word that's thrown out quite a bit, but I don't think a lot of times people really understand what a victim is and what a family is and what a victim's family goes through. You're going to hear from two people down here, Sarah and Terry, that lived this. We had the ability, we had the skill. I don't want to say honor and privilege, but the honor and privilege to be a policeman is a great one, and I take it very personal. And with that honor and privilege comes a lot of responsibility, and the responsibility is to those two people right there to do the right thing, to fight, to continue on, to find the answers, no matter how much time, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much you want to say, I need to go home to that barbecue or that birthday party or whatever. You can't look people like this in the face and say it's time for me to go home at their suffering. So this is a case, Tyler Hurtle. Tyler was shot and killed on October 6, 2016 at about 3:50 a.m. in the 4000 block of Meadow Lane in South Bend, Indiana. South Bend police officers received a call of shots fired out there. Tyler had been walking into his home with his girlfriend when this occurred. Instead of you having to listen to me all night, and I will interfere once in a while, or I guess interject maybe is a better word than interfere, but if you get to know me a little bit, you'll find out it's interfere. So I'm going to let Gary Mullins start off with kind of giving you a background on what happened, just a real brief synopsis. And then I'm going to go right on to Sarah, Tyler's mother, and you're going to hear things that are probably, if there aren't people crying by the end of this, I'm going to be surprised.
So Tyler was in the early dating process with his girlfriend, and they made arrangements to meet up, and she was coming back to a home where he stayed at with several of his buddies. Unbeknownst to him, when he got back to the home, there was a couple individuals that ended up ultimately taking his life. Tyler was ambushed and shot by Sir Lloyd Patterson and Presley Brown. Also with them, a driver by the name of Caleb Smith. As Tyler was trying to get into the house, unlock the door, he was approached by both Presley and Sir, pointing guns at him, wanted him to get in, unlock the door. Tyler refused to unlock the door, and it's my firm belief that had Tyler unlocked that door, we might have had several more people that were injured that evening. So I believe Tyler's responsible for saving the lives of those people inside the house, his buddies' lives. So he didn't go down without a fight. He put up a struggle. He was hit over the head, knocked down, and shot selflessly by these two individuals. And then they ran off with no gain. Tyler wasn't the intended target for this. This was supposed to be some kind of marijuana rip over a quarter pound of weed that somebody inside the house, unbeknownst to Tyler, was selling.
Well, Gary, after you guys got at the scene, how did you finally get in contact, or who got in contact with Sarah? You remember?
I believe it was some of the people that were living with Tyler inside the home. One of the young men reached out, and then put us in contact with Sarah at that time.
Sarah, why don't we, this is kind of the basic outline of what happened. We'll go into more detail with the crime scene and that kind of thing, but Sarah, kind of walk us through that ugly morning that you got contacted?
Well, so it was a regular morning, and I woke up, went to work, and my thought as I was driving to work, as most mothers will know, even though he was out of the house, I'm still thinking about he had a dentist appointment that morning, and so it's like, all right, around 10 o'clock, call and make sure he's awake so that he can get to his dentist appointment on time. And so I get to work and say hello to my coworkers, kind of joking around with them. And as I'm walking back to my office, I look at my phone and I see that there was a shooting on the west side. That's all I see. It's just like a notification. And I didn't want to, because I have a really bad habit of always thinking the worst and worrying to the point where it kind of holds me back a little because I'm worried about everything. And so I was trying to talk myself out of it. I was like, you don't need to look at it. It's not Tyler. Stop, But of course I didn't win that battle with myself. And so I looked and I saw that it was on Meadow Lane, which is where Tyler lives. So then I went and saw a picture, and it was of the house he's in and also like one next door. So then I was like, well, maybe it's the house next door, but I'm freaking out now. And I made a call to my girlfriend first, who works at the prosecutor's office, and she didn't answer. So then I called her brother, who's a policeman, and he answered, and I said, Danny, there was a shooting. It's on Tyler Street. I need to know. I need to know if he's okay. And he said, I don't know anything about it. I'll call you back. So in the meantime, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Should I leave? Should I go over there? I didn't know. And so I end up looking on Tyler's Facebook page to see if he's posting anything and that's when I saw one of his roommates had posted RIP to Tyler, and that he had held him in his arms or something. And I want to say for anybody listening, please let the police notify family before you start going to social media, because that is not the way to find out. In the meantime, I believe that you were frantically trying to locate me, and you had gone up to Tyler's work, and then Wendy had gotten in touch with you, and the next thing I know, you and Wendy were walking through my office door to notify me. My coworker called Terry.
Your boss did, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my boss, and told him that, we think Tyler was shot and killed. You need to come up here. And even Terry, because he knows how I am, was like, I'm sure that's not what happened. I'll go up there, but I'm sure that's not what happened, because I know how Sarah is. She's probably just worrying and she's jumping to conclusions. And then when he walked in and saw you and Wendy in my office, he knew that it was true.
Terry, you want to take it from there? What happened?
Yeah, as Sarah said, that when I received a voicemail from her boss, and there's not a ton I remember from that day, but I do remember her voice message saying, we think Tyler's been shot and killed. You need to get up here. Which, I mean, I didn't even know how to react. I'm like, what? That's no. So I remember driving downtown to Sarah's building and thinking the entire time this has to be a mistake. Obviously, there's no way. I mean, things like that don't happen to people like us, and there's no way. And so I got up to her floor, and the anxiety starts the adrenaline starts going, because I don't know what I'm going to walk into. And before I even knocked on her door, as it turns out, she was in her office with you and Wendy. But outside of the office itself, I could hear her wailing. And so at that point, I knew it wasn't good. They let me in, and the somber looks on everybody's face. And then I got to her office, and yeah, when the door opened and I saw you and Wendy sitting there, I knew that, wow. And it was, she talks a lot about how the weeks after she was numb and doesn't remember a ton. You know, Tyler was not my son, but we've been together how long now? 13, 14 years.
13.
So I met Tyler when he was 11, I think. I remember more than she does, I think, but it was, for myself, a lot of it is blurry too when you think of memories and just and I'm sure we'll get into it, but the time shortly thereafter when we found out, it just, there's no, you don't gain experience in the course of your life on how to deal with something like this. There's no playbook, there's no game plan. So yeah, it was shocking to say the least.
I think it's the bodies. I think your body and your mind are incredible. I think had that not happened, for that first year, I was in almost like a haze. My younger son was 6, and I really don't remember much of him being 6, just because of. But I think your body, your mind does that to protect you, because I don't know how you go on. I don't know how you keep surviving. And like, here I am 4+ years out now, and I don't know how I've gotten here. I'm glad I'm here because of, I've got the other little guy, but there's no bringing Tyler back. He was my firstborn. I have 2 sons, and he was 14 years older than his brother. And
Describe him to me. Describe Tyler. What kind of man was he? What kind of kid was he?
he was a goofball, but he was like he was one of the most empathetic souls. Just cares about other people. Like, was able to put himself in other people's shoes. He had a heart of gold. He would give you the shirt off his back. He would have given anybody the shirt off his back. He was always whistling or singing. He was a tow truck driver for Tony's Mobile here, and there was a lot of people after this happened that, were coming up and on his obituary, just mentioning different stories. He was a stranger to these people, but like, he stood out to them because of his kindness and the kind of person that he was. They met him one time. He was my heart.
Do you guys remember what happened after we left the bank?
Yeah. So I Meadow Lane is between downtown and where I live. And so, which is another thing that's just bizarre to think about, that I drove by. It's off of the street I drive by on, but like, I literally drove by there that morning and had no idea what was going on a block over. But I made him bring me by there, and all the crime scene tape was up. And there was still some breathing things that the EMTs had used on Tyler on the ground there. And I saw Gary, who was another Metro homicide officer. And I had known Gary before. And he looked at me, and I could just tell, like, he just he went back into the truck and he didn't come back out because he didn't want to face me right then. And it was raining so hard, and I remember just standing out there in the rain, like just not believing that this could be true. Like Terry said, this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen to us.
I think everybody says that. People, it happens, in big cities. It happens all over. And we've probably had, I'll bet, a half a dozen homicides. And when people say it's just marijuana, I'll bet we had a half a dozen homicides over just marijuana, because somebody, would get on the internet and flash money and a gun and gang signs and a little bag of dope, and they think they're big ballers. And of course, other people hear it and they see it. And, that quarter ounce became a half ounce, and it became 2 pounds, and it became 8 pounds. And pretty soon somebody's kicking in your door thinking they're going to hit the cartel or something. And they end up doing stupid things because they're stupid people. And you can couch it any way you want. You can make it sound as smooth and easy. And, why some of these people do these things. They do it, number one, out of greed. Instead of going to work every day and earning a living, their living is kicking in your door and taking what you have. And I have literally sat across the table and heard people just make excuses for what they did, that he made me shoot him. Well, let's go back to the part where you kicked his door and you had a gun and you were trying to rape his wife or something. Let's talk about that. He made me shoot him. So they're always victims. They're always victims themselves. But, after you did all that, let's get back to the scene. Now, Gary, you and Tim Wiley, you guys were out at the scene. How long were you guys out there, and what did you do?
Well, I know we went basically door to door around the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking anybody and everybody in the neighborhood, what did you see? What did you hear? Not just that night, but in the past, what have you seen going on in and out of that house before? What's the general feeling of that particular house in the neighborhood? How do they feel about it? I think from there, that was a couple hours.
Yeah, definitely out there for several hours, canvassing, talking to people, looking for any camera systems, pulling up shot spotter reports, things of that nature. But our time out there was not near as long as the evidence technicians that were out there just doing hour after hour, recovering evidence, doing bullet trajectory, running lines for the paths of the bullet, just collecting ballistics, going through the house to make sure everything was on the up and up. After we were done with our canvass, we went back to speak with the several people that were inside the house.
When you guys talk to the people inside the house, you kind of get a little idea about what kind of house that was and what was going on, or a little feel for that?
Yeah, it was a low grade, I get marijuana dealing house. There was one guy particular that was selling marijuana out of the house. And it's entirely possible that not everybody that was at the house knew what was going on there. So, you hit the nail on the head when you said that, weed's not dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous, because even the short amount of time that I worked back in homicide, there were several cases that it was all over the marijuana. And this was a quarter pound of marijuana deal that was set up.
Well, didn't information come out about they thought that there was somebody inside the house that was really rolling pretty big, and they wanted to rob that guy, and that guy didn't show up. So, we're here, we got the guns, we're all gloved up, masked up, we're ready to do our robbery, and by God, we got to rob somebody.
Yeah.
And here comes Tyler home, minding his own business, doing nothing other than what you're supposed to be doing, going home. And, this young lady's going to show up, and, I'm sure Tyler didn't expect anything like this. And I truly believe the way you do that Tyler fought, knowing that he was not only fighting for his life, but even more importantly in his mind, he was fighting for the young lady's life, because that, by all practical means, should have been a double homicide. And it wasn't for lack of trying, because they shot at her, or one of the guys shot at her.
Absolutely. The bullet, ballistics prove the fact that as they were shooting, it was tracking her path of retreat. Tyler was targeted because he was driving that individual who's selling marijuana out of the house, his vehicle. So they knew when that vehicle pulled up, that was their cue to get out of their car, get out of their hide, and ambush them. But unbeknownst to them, they didn't realize who this guy was.
So you don't even know what your target is. You just know that house has something, and whoever shows up, we're going to get it.
Right. The house was pointed out. I'm sure that these guys aren't brain surgeons. They didn't give a description of who the actual target was. It's not a well thought out plan. It was very poorly planned and poorly executed.
Well, just so everybody knows, 3 people did end up going to prison for this, and it was because of the hard work of the homicide unit and the street officers and the radio dispatchers and the fire department and everybody else that was involved. Many times you'll hear me say, I did this, I did that. I'm one part. I'm one eye that does one thing. That's another eye, that's another eye, that's another eye, and it all comes together to become a we in a team, and it gets things done. Anybody ever tells you they solved one of these, I did this, they're lying to you. Nobody has ever solved a crime without help. So don't listen to a lot of that TV stuff. Everything's solved in a half hour and NCIS, and there's satellites in the air that's flying around and they pick up all the stuff. What works is good hard work, good interviews, informants. Informants are the lifeblood of police work. I've made a living out of informants. And when I say they are mine. There came a time that I got a phone call, and this is the I this time because I got the phone call, not everybody. We didn't do put it on speakerphone because I don't know how to put it on speakerphone. So, matter of fact, I had a flip phone, the last one in the county, so that tells you how technologically savvy I am. But anyway, I was able to pick up the phone and say Corbett homicide, and it was somebody up in the county jail, and that person proceeded to puke a story up like I couldn't believe it. I was like a 5th grade girl. I was yelling for these guys, get in here. And the person gave information about one of these guys up here that he had been in a car chase with the police department. He bailed out as he was running across the field. He pitched a gun. He went up a hill over a fence and got caught on the other side of the fence. The informant called me and said, hey, did you guys have a high-speed chase? Yeah, what are you talking about? And he laid it out. The guy bailed out down by
Lieber Park?
Yeah, down by Lieber Park. He bailed out of the car, ran across the field. When he ran, he pitched a gun. That gun is the one that killed the dude, he said, out on Meadow Lane. Really, how do you know that? I just been told. And we set out, I think we checked twice.
I checked more than that because I was even working part-time jobs, and in between my part-time jobs, working Notre Dame traffic. And when they were in the basketball game or hockey game or something like that, and I wasn't required to be there, I went out looking with our strategic focus unit and other officers that volunteered their time, not getting paid, to go look for this gun. And then lo and behold, my partner comes back from vacation, and after looking multiple times through that field, he kind of went off the beaten path, and he locates the thing.
Well, he thought it was a donut. He didn't think it was a gun.
I was pretty hungry that day.
Pretty hungry.
So, and that's we had Indiana State Police K9 out there. That's one of the bomb dogs that detects gunpowder, and we were doing anything and everything that we could to try to locate this this pistol, the faux 5 as they call it, which is a .45 caliber pistol, and fresh set of eyes out in some brush located it. And once we got it back, went to the South Bend Police Department, and I know Corbett mentioned named Ray Wolfenbarger. He is a phenomenal tool mark and firearm examiner. He's done. I would put that guy up against anybody in the country as far as tool mark and firearm ballistics examiner. I think we've got the best in the nation. He was able to link that gun that my partner Tim Wiley found to the shooting on Meadow Lane, and one of them that shot Tyler Hurtle.
You know, you can't imagine how that feels when you get the call. I'm the commander. These guys are out walking. I went out and walked before, and everybody put the effort in. Like you said, people that weren't even getting paid cared that much to go out and do this. And then Wiley O here walks along, and he finds that, and I get a call. I don't know why he always said it. He'd say boss, and I'm not. I can't even spell boss, but he'd say, "Boss, we got it." Of course, then you can bleep right here. What'd you find? And they had the gun. What's the chances of the information that I received given to those guys, passed along, that gun's found, that's not the 4.5, the 45 that committed this act? Get that thing, get a photograph, do everything we need to do, preserve that, get it down to Ray, bang, bang, boom, we got our gun. Now we have a whole different ball game, Mm-hmm. I can't express enough how much informants, cooperative people that really care and want to solve these crimes instead of tucking their heads and saying, I didn't see anything, I didn't do anything. Look, people are getting killed at an ungodly rate, and it's because a lot of times people don't want to cooperate on what they've seen. So these guys go on and just keep killing and just keep killing. This wasn't the case. We had a lot of help, a lot of good people. But after that gun was found and Ray went bang, that's it. What happened?
Well, it opened up a whole other avenue. We started researching who Sir knows. It was Sir that did that run through the area and threw their gun down. We started researching everybody that he knew, all the connections that he would have had, and that's when we come across Caleb and find our connections to Caleb back to Sir. And then from that, we start working on Sir, finding old cases that he's involved in, find new things that he's involved in. Just so happened on what was that 11/1, which is November 1st, he gets arrested for a driving offense and some marijuana that was in the car. He goes, instead of going straight to jail, he comes to our office, and we start working on it, and start talking about different things, start working through the different investigation. We also get his phone. He gives us permission to go through his phone, start going through that stuff. And from there, we ended up having to talk to Caleb, I want to say 4 different interviews, maybe 5.
Yeah, I think it was probably more along the lines of 5 to 10 different times. But he, once he finally realized the amount of time that he was looking at for this homicide, I think his guilty heart started pulling at the heartstrings. At that point in time, he was looking at felony murder, and attempted robbery. So he was looking at quite a bit of time, and he's not the type of guy that could do a whole lot of that time in prison. So he decided to jump on the justice train and give us the additional information, tell us how everything went down and who was involved. But that's not where it stops. Just because he tells us that, we need to go out and put the clues together to prove or disprove what it is that he's saying. So it's our job. It's on our shoulders to give him that credibility through proving what he's saying is true or disproving what he's saying.
Well, I think many times these guys find out that, they want to hold strong and be tough and hold it down and all the verbiage that's out there. But when it really comes down to it, there's no loyalty. The minute you get locked up and you're getting ready to do 20, 30, 50 years, a lot of things are going to happen to you. First off, the dudes that you think are your good buddies, they're going to kick your mama's door in and steal all her stuff. They're going to go snuggle up against your girlfriend because she's 18 years old and you think she's going to wait 50 years for you to come back and spoon. That ain't happening. The guys aren't going to put money on your books because they don't need you because you're not productive for them anymore. You can't bring dope. You can't bring stolen goods. You can't do anything. So pretty much what you are is chattel. You're being used. You're being taken down a way of life that you probably don't understand yet, but you've been spun into it. And you're being spun into it by me, who's a lot smarter than you. And the minute you get shot, the first thing I'm going to do is go out and buy a T-shirt with your name on it and your picture, and I'm going to act tough and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is you're going to be replaced in about 5 minutes. You're dispensable. You're a commodity that I can use for my good. You can believe it or you cannot believe it, but you're going to be the one doing the 60, 80 years, not me. So take it from somebody that's been around and was commander for 17 years and a policeman for 45. I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I'm not the most good-looking guy in the world. You can see that, but I sure as hell have a PhD in street, and I know what I'm talking about. Sarah, pick it up from there. Once we snag these 3 guys up, how did you get that information? How did you feel?
Well, I went back up just a little bit because I don't want to come off as like this naive thinking my son was just this innocent little angel and he had no idea that there was pot being sold out of the house. I'm sure he knew. But as any 20-year-old, again, we're talking about marijuana, pot. It's not a big deal to these kids, to a lot of people, right? And at 20, A, you think you're invincible, and B, I'm not doing it, so it's not going to, there's nothing that's going to happen to me because of it, and I'm sure that's what he thought. And yet here it is. He was killed over something that somebody else was doing. And if you associate with that, you're putting yourself in that position. And I'm not saying he deserved what happened at all, because he didn't. He did not deserve this. But I'm saying kids, young adults need to think about what kind of positions they're putting themselves in. Because I guarantee you, that would never have crossed Tyler's mind. It would never have crossed my mind that this could happen to him. And this could happen to him over marijuana that his roommate had. But so I just wanted to get that out there. But the other thing, on TV, it sounds like, oh, this happens, arrests are made. Next thing you know, you're at trial. That's not how it is. That's not how it is when you're the victim.
Yeah, I'll point out something that you said a little bit ago about TV and about when you're talking about talking to informants and you're interviewing people. I do remember she was on the phone quite a bit with yourself, with the detectives. I remember Tim coming over a few times to the house and giving us sort of an update on where the investigation was. Obviously, unless you're involved in it, you have no idea. I had no idea the amount of work that law enforcement does to make this happen, to make justice happen. The amount of hours, and again, TV, they got to button it up in a nice little bow within an hour. That's not real life. So there were times I know during it where we would talk and you don't know if you're going to get resolution. You don't know if you're going to get justice because there's so many different things that can happen during the course of an investigation that it's just amazing. It was amazing to watch all the work that went into it to bring justice.
Well, it's hard for the cops too, because there's a lot of things that we know, but we can't say it. Because if we tell you and you go, I got a friend, don't tell anybody, whisper, and then, before long, everybody at the coffee shop hears what happened. And then when we get somebody like this informant that came forward and helped us with this, it can minimize that information. So me as the commander, I always had to kind of walk a fine line, and I was choosy with my words, and many times I'm not, but in those particular cases, I am, just to make sure I give you a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel and hope, but also protect the integrity of the case, because Tyler's your son, but he's my responsibility. He's our responsibility to do the right thing. And I'm not having something, I'm not going to have something kicked back because we did something inappropriate or illegal, or it's just not going to happen. When the game's over, you gone to trial, we kicked your ass off the planet. I want it to stay like that. I don't want anything coming back.
Right. So, and I was going to say the same thing, that, we were in touch quite often, but, I'm in the dark about a lot of what's going on. so that was scary. That was scary, not only for me, but for my younger son, who he's 6 years old. He was 6 years old and his brother was just murdered. What that does to a kid isn't good. And, he was afraid that whoever it was, because we didn't know at this time, right? Are they going to come get me? Are they, no, Colton, but we didn't know at this point. I don't know who's involved. I don't know, were the roommates somehow involved? I didn't know, so I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who to listen to. I mean, obviously I need to trust you guys, but I didn't know. Right. And so I'm talking with you quite often. I remember we had a discussion one day and I came down there with a picture because we were talking about a young lady that had also kind of been involved in setting this up. And I was afraid that this was an old girlfriend of Tyler's, but it turns out it wasn't. I mean, Tyler really didn't know these three people at all. He had seen, I think, Caleb before, because Caleb had been at the house to do some kind of thing with musical equipment or something with the roommate.
Did he sell some stereo equipment?
I think so.
Yeah, he tried pawning off it was like a beat mixer, and I tried to sell some speakers and a microphone that ultimately didn't end up being a microphone. It was a plug in the wall type vibrator, which shows you the intelligence level of some of these people.
Do you remember when we talked to him and literally he's talking about the stereo equipment, and then we knew what he thought was a microphone, and it was a vibrator, and he plugged it into the wall and he's going test, 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 test. And the thing is going, and he is so stupid, he can't figure out what it is.
Yeah,
we had to explain it to him. That's not a vibrator. That's not Mr. Microphone. I mean, that's not a microphone. It's not Mr. Microphone. It's a vibrator. And he like, what? Yeah. Then, of course, he introduced us to a female friend of his that was in the business of selling the product, keeping the product, and it has very little maintenance on it. She was a prostitute. And we talked to her, and she told us how much she charged, and she even let us know she had a la carte. You could order extra things off her repertoire of sexual endeavors if you would like. So that was one of those, just when you think you've heard it all.
But on a positive note for her, when we did finally sit down with her and have a conversation with her, she did ultimately admit that who had told her to set this up, because she was going to be the go-between between our robbers and our victims to make sure that the product was going to be at the house. She was going to order it up. They were going to be there. She was going to be actually the person to go there and get it. She didn't do that, but the robbers did go and try to get it, and we got that information from her. So she did give us good information in the end.
And she couldn't even believe the microphone story, but it's true.
So, like I said, Tyler didn't know these people. Caleb had been there before, and I found out later, obviously, through one of the other roommates, not the one that was directly involved with this, that I guess Tyler had said right away, I don't want him back in this house. Like, the way he was looking around, Tyler already just kind of had a bad feeling about this guy. So it was, again, just kind of shows where Tyler was, like Tyler wasn't an idiot. Tyler knew what was going on, and he was like, this guy, I don't want him in this house again. But of course he came back. So I remember the day, I remember hearing on the news about that there was a police presence over by Leaper Park, and they were looking for something. And that was all that was said. Didn't even say what they were looking for. And I remember thinking, God, I wonder, because again, we're almost 3 weeks, I think, from the time of Tyler's murder, and not knowing where things are at. And you wouldn't tell me anything, but you did try to give me like some hope that, we're working on it and we've got some leads, but you're not going to give me any information. And that's okay, because I too didn't want anything to be screwed up for the case, right? When you did find these people, and I had all the faith in the world because, you know, like you said, you've got people given time in searching for guns when they're off duty. You know, they don't have to be out there. But I remember hoping that maybe this is something about Tyler. And then I believe not too long after, you called me down to let me know that there had been an arrest. So
How'd you feel when I told you that? When I told you that, I had the honor and the privilege of doing that on behalf of all these officers. But how'd you feel?
you know, you feel bad. I mean, you feel good, right? Like, okay, this person's not on the street anymore. This person's not out there living life and enjoying things. But none of this, not even here 4 years later, and you know, we'll get into that, the trials and that they're away. It doesn't bring Tyler back. None of this brings it back. You know, do I have some justice in this case? Absolutely. Can I imagine? I can't even imagine. Like, nobody should have to go through, no parent should have to plan their funeral for their child for any reason, but much less for something so violent, so quick. You know, one minute he was a healthy, happy 20-year-old boy that had dreams and plans and goals. And the next minute I'm planning his funeral. But I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
What had you asked me?
No. Well, we were talking about how did you feel when the arrest was made, and
Right. So I'm glad, right? But it's just, it doesn't change anything for me, but I can't imagine that's where I was going. I can't imagine. So there's a lot of people that are in my position, unfortunately, where their child has been murdered or a loved one has been murdered, that they never get to see justice be served, that they never know, you know. And during those weeks before these guys were all arrested, you know, I'd go into the store, 7-Eleven or something. Is this person? Is this the one that did it? I don't know. Right? So there's that sense of relief, I guess, that they're off the street. They're not going to hurt anybody else. They're not hurting anybody else's child.
what do you think of the word closure?
There's no closure. And it's hard to say that. It's hard to, I don't want to because I don't want to seem unthankful for everything that you guys have done. Like I am so thankful for what you guys have done, what the prosecutor team did, and you know, then taking what all of your hard work and then putting it to use in the courtroom and getting this justice, and that we have justice, but we're never going to have closure. Every day that I wake up, my son is still gone.
I hate that word closure. People, that word is thrown around much like hero, in my opinion. You know, you're a hero because you showed up for work, you know, and all that. But anyway, closure is a poor word. You have an ending and an answer. That's what you have. If you had closure, you just wake up the next day and go, hey, everything's done. I'm not thinking about this ever again. You have an answer and you have an ending. But
that's a good way to put it. Yes. Because, yeah.
Well, now, guys, it's back on you. Now we've got our 3 arrests, and you've got the reams and reams and reams of paperwork, and we've sent evidence off, and we got evidence back, and we have answers on it. We have to sit down with the prosecutor's office. They have to do a charging affidavit, and these guys get spanked with that. And then we have pre-trials where we bring in the family, other people, everybody involved, and we get prepared. Who was witness in chief on that?
I was.
Okay, so witness in chief, so people know, you have to know that case forward and backwards. You're the guy that sits right there with the prosecutor and the paralegal and everybody else, and you have to be ready to go and really know that case. So that takes hours and hours and hours to get through it, to read it, to know it, to do everything you have to do to prepare. And now comes the day of trial. A jury is picked, the jury is seated, opening arguments, and we begin. Were you able to sit in the courtroom that whole time, Sarah?
I was.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you also, Terry?
Yes,
Because you guys weren't on the witness list, correct?
correct.
All right, and if they would have had what they call separation of witnesses, you'd have had to sit out in the rotunda, you wouldn't have been able to hear anything.
The only time I wasn't in there, and that was by, took a lot of convincing. But the prosecutor, Chris, convinced me to go out during the autopsy stuff because I'm glad I did, because he was like, this isn't how you want to remember Tyler. You want to remember him. That's not what you want in your mind every time you're thinking of him. So really appreciate that he.
Yeah, there's certain
Yes,
things
ma'am.
you don't need to hear and see. There's, you hear people say, I can't scrub that out of my brain. Not that we ever get used to it, but for lack of better verbiage, you do kind of get used to it because you've lived it. You see it all the time. The things that we have to see and smell and, autopsies and little babies that have been killed and all that, people, they really don't have an idea what these guys, I'm saying these guys now because I retired, so I'm one of those guys instead of one of these guys, go through for that. And we know what it's like, and you shouldn't have to know what it's like.
Well, and thank God that there's people like you guys that do that every day. Because I can't imagine what that weight that you guys carry, too. So
Well,
I'm thankful that there's people like you.
I use the term for these guys and everybody else that's involved in this business. You can't let this stuff live rent free in your head. If you do, it will destroy you. Then you're not a good husband, a good dad, a good grandpa, a good friend, a good anything, because monsters get to live in your head and it eats you up every day. You have to be able to put that same term like I use. You got to pull that shade down and leave it behind there. And when you have to crack it a little bit to get motivated or mad or mean or whatever it is, you're able to do it. But now I've done my Dr. Phil thing. We're at trial. How many days was that?
5. It was Monday through Friday.
Describe that. How did?
Well, again, just so people realize, you say we're at trial, but there were so many court hearings and times before that, where they're getting brought in front and, I want to change my lawyer, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. And all these, it keeps getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And each time that's like it's a little knock down, you think, okay, this is it. And then you get knocked down again. And nope, it's not it. But I made it my job for Tyler that I was there every single time. If they were appearing in court for anything, I was there so that they saw me seeing them. And I just wanted them to get used to seeing me, because this is what you did. You took my kid, my son, so we get to trial, and man,
It's hard. To her point about things being delayed, I wouldn't say so much for me, but I know for her, just seeing her at home, when the trial is coming up in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 1 week, there's like a mental preparation that you go through as the mom. There's a mental preparation. There was an emotional preparation. Her mood would change as we got closer. And then we would get to the, night before and, oh, wait, and now it's going to be 4 months from now. And so knowing that we're going to go through that all over again, and knowing that there were, it wasn't just going to be one trial, it was going to be 3 trials. And so knowing that, okay, we're going to have to go through this 3 times. And then the one thing that I noticed in the trial itself that I had no idea of, you're sitting there and literally you're there the entire day and you're just sitting on pins and needles. And you're not moving. You're listening intently to everything that is being said. You're gauging the jurors to see how they're reacting to things that are said by each witness, by the attorneys. And then, we're going over it each night, but you're, at least we were listening for things that could potentially jeopardize the case. We felt, just based on conversations, that it should have been a slam dunk, which fortunately it turned out to be. But when you have a jury,
you've got 12 people.
that, yeah, you don't know. You don't know what one person might think something different. And so, I just found myself sitting there and just listening to everything and trying to, is there anything in this testimony that could potentially sway somebody to think differently than they should be? And it was bizarre because we would get home, I'd be physically tired. Like I just worked out for 5 hours. I'm like, what? I'm sitting in a courtroom. How can that be? But it does. It drains you. It absolutely drains you.
How'd you feel sitting in there listening to, the continuances? That's the one thing that always, I'm not prepared. A defense attorney walks in and says, I'm not prepared. Continuance. I'm not prepared to continue. I'd like to walk in one day and say, I'd really like to testify and read my reports. I'd like a continuance. That guy in a black robe would say, sit your ass down right there. You're talking. Mm-hmm. I don't get a continuance. I have to be prepared. Why don't you? But
that's another thing too, when we go back to, you don't want anything jeopardizing the case,
No.
So these continuances, while they're very hard on the victim's family, it's, you want that to happen because you don't want, if they get found guilty, you don't want them to have anything to be able to appeal about that could, well, I wasn't given a fair shot because here you didn't let me do a continuance. So in the end, even though it's hard, it's what's best.
I get it. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a ton of preparation leading into a trial, and not by just the chief witness, but the entire team. We've went through multiple cell phone warrants, social media warrants. All that stuff had to be looked through. We had 3 people that were arrested for Tyler's murder. So listening to 3 people's phone calls, and I don't know where some of these guys get the money to pay for these phone calls, but these are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, and they're taking the money off of their books, and that's something that we all got to listen to and spread out throughout the team, and try to find a needle in a haystack there. It's just scouring, prepping, making sure that everything is set. And then, like you said, you may go there and the defense attorney asks for a continuance because he's got a toothache or he was not ready or his client gave him some brand new information or just any excuse under the sun. And of course, the judge is going to err on the side of caution because the defense is in the lead, I guess. It's just and our job doesn't stop. Our other job, aside from going to court, we're still looking at other investigations, other homicides that we're looking into. So prepping up, our main focus is on this case, but it's just time consuming for the entire team. So hunting down witnesses that don't necessarily
Want
to be hunted down, and we've got to go out and find them and provide them rides to court, make sure that they can get to court, make sure they can get to the pretrials. It's exhausting.
Well, when you would have got a text that we got the guys found guilty. I think everybody in the unit gets like a group text or get a call or whatever. We got them. Jury's out. Jury's coming back. Come on down. And there's just a stampede, and you can just feel it in the air. You remember that?
I do remember that. So they went out. They went. What's that called? When
The jury were here.
Deliberations. They went out for deliberations.
That's a big word. We don't.
It is. It was a big word.
We knew what you were talking about when you said went out.
They went out. They went out, and then they closed that door.
Yeah, there
and
was
they
like
sat at the table.
too many vowels in
They
that
discussed. But we went up to the prosecutor's office, and it was. Oh God! I mean, again, you're sitting there, okay, was there anything, what do you think? Well, how do you think that one juror number 8 was looking when he walked out? Do you think that, and you don't know, right? We don't know. And this isn't something, I've never sat through trials before, right? Because why would I? I hadn't ever been involved. I sat through once because I was on the jury, but I've never. So we go up there and we're sitting there, and we're not eating lunch or anything because it was a lunch break. They started deliberating at lunchtime, and it was an hour and 15 minutes, and we got the call that they had made their decision. So not only did they order lunch, get lunch, eat lunch, and they came to a decision right away. So we went back in there, and my best friend was on this side and he was on the other side. And I know my hands were probably so sweaty, and I know they were shaking, and I'm just holding their hands, and to hear them come back with guilty. I mean, it just, yeah.
Well, think about what you just said, an hour and 15 minutes.
Hour and
That
15
means
minutes.
that jury was so thoroughly convinced
Mhm.
that it was devastating.
Yeah. Well, you guys did a great job. I mean, there was, if you had sat through the trial, if you had sat through it all, I don't know how looking at it from not being the victim's mother, because of course I'm like, is there any chance? Is there doubt? But if you look at it, and if you had sat there and listened to it, the evidence that you guys had against the 3 of them, there was no doubt. And especially when it comes down to the phone calls, that was the phone calls themselves, and the cell phones, and the triangulating them, and there was no doubt. There was just no doubt. And the messages that were setting up the stuff. I mean, you guys had it all. The gun. There was no question.
And it speaks to the preparation that you were talking about earlier. I mean, it was, we would go home and she would, everything was a question. Everything was, well, what about this? Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And I was able to sit there, and because again, I had been listening intently to every single syllable, including deliberation, said during it that
The word.
there was, I would tell her every night, I said, there's no way. There's no way that this jury is not going to find them guilty. It's impossible. You would have to be an idiot to not see what's been presented. And again, that's the preparation. I mean, it was everyone involved. I was going to bring up the thing about the cell phone stuff, the triangulation, and the way that you, Tim, the way that you answered the questions and explained it, because I had no idea about how that stuff worked. And then I walked out of there and felt like I was an expert, like I could explain it to somebody. So, I mean, that just speaks volumes of the work that you guys did. And that's also, Gary, I think a great call out about you guys are putting all this time in for these trials. There's other homicides going on. It's not like South Bend stops for this one trial and then they'll pick back up after that. So remarkable.
Well, that's where the
And
teamwork
the
comes
fact
in.
that you put in that much dedication, to me, this trial, these 3 trials were everything, right? This is my focus. But you guys have got all this other stuff going on, and to give that kind of dedication and work that you're putting in on all of these cases, because I know you do. I know you do.
But, stop and think about it. What kind of men would we be, and women of the police department? What kind of human beings at 5 o'clock it's time to go home, and you're right in the middle of something you could really break, something you could really pop something, and you are more concerned about getting home and throwing hamburgers on the grill than your family. But yet I'm going to say, I want a raise, I want a cool squad car, I want new gun belt, I want a new gun, I want this, I want all the cool stuff. But when it comes time to really produce and do what you're supposed to, I don't want to do that. I can't have it both ways. You have to sacrifice. You have to. I can tell you anybody that worked with me, nobody ever worked for me, they worked with me, that wasn't about that wasn't willing to give everything to get this done, then they weren't going to be there, because I didn't ask anything from them that I don't do myself. And to me, anybody can supervise. You can read a manual, go with it. your shoes don't match your, and I'm gonna write you up, and you didn't wear your mask, and here's three, all that kind of stuff. But when you have people that want to go out, that's in their DNA. I didn't teach them heart. I didn't teach them DNA. I may taught them some techniques, but it's there. And half these guys, instead of kicking their ass out the door, you got to grab them like this and go, hang on a second. What are we going to do? And then there are other times I'm walking in there. I'm sure they heard me coming down the hallway and they're going, oh shit, he's got something now. And it was gone. We just did it. We need to go to Ohio to talk to somebody. Go. We need to go here. Go. If I got to mop up behind you and put powder on your butt because you need, that every day, you're not going to be there. And that's what people need to really understand, the dedication, the want, the desire to find the right answers. The right answers, not just any answer, the right answer is the truth. So I'm going to stop flapping my jaws. What do you have something, Gary, you want to say, kind of closing? We'll go right around the room, let everybody give their little.
No, I just think, shout out to my partner, Tim Wiley, with the cell phone stuff. And him being able to explain that. He does a phenomenal job. I don't know if maybe that's because he's a prior Marine and he's able to dumb it down so that even the Marines can understand it.
I thought it was because it was an idiot savant. We'll go with that.
But, just the triangulation with the cell phones was huge in showing movements on how this stuff went. And we mentioned earlier that we did find the one gun. Well, Tim Wiley, my partner, is the one that found that.
Gary, what did you do?
It's not a whole lot of.
Well, before this, I told him that every time he says my name and a good thing, I'm going to give him $5.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I only got 100 in my pocket. So.
But we actually found both guns that were involved in the Tyler Hurtle homicide, and that was involved in another case that was almost a homicide as well. And the place where we got the gun is linked to Presley and Sir as well, some of their cohorts. So able to get two guns off the street, not me solely, but police work in general, get those two guns off the street that were responsible for this homicide.
Well, our two techs out there, who were they?
I think we had three. It was Norby, Kyle, and I want to say Jim Andrews was out there as well.
Yeah. Well, I think John Gray was out there for a portion of it because he was covering for one of the guys. So John Gray from the South Bend Police Department, Michael Norby from the South Bend Police Department, Kenny Cornelis from St. Joe County Police Department.
That's where I saw that day.
Or
when I said Gary.
Kenny. Yeah.
Everybody knows Kenny.
And you talked about the weather out there. Those guys, they're out there, even though it's in the summer, you still get cold with that rain. They sat out there for hours and hours. I wouldn't want that job. You couldn't give me that job. It's way too technical for me. I don't want to do it. So that's why I do what I do. But those guys, with their evidence, they make a lot of these cases just with their evidence. These guys do a lot of work. Everybody does a lot of work, and that's where it comes back to the eye thing. But those guys, I don't know how they do it. Sometimes they're out there in 2-degree weather, freezing their butts off, and maybe don't have any food because nobody was bringing them anything or staying warm. And it's a god-awful job that I think a lot of times people forget. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about those guys. They're great people. Tim, you got anything?
Yeah, well, I got to give a shout out to Gary because he was the primary on this case.
You guys ought to get married. You sound like
Well, he said every time I say something nice.
Give him back his $5.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm out there doing the secondary job of the investigator. I'm doing what I'm doing, but he has a primary job of keeping everything straight. Every single interview, every single piece of evidence, every single if and what or whatever goes on with this case, he has to keep it straight. I don't know how he keeps it straight, either in his head, in his notebook, on his computer, whatever he's doing to keep it straight. He's keeping it straight, making it work, getting to trial, getting to the finish line and crossing that finish line.
And again, he can't keep it straight unless the technicians keep all their stuff straight, unless you get policemen out on the street do the thing, the people in the radio room, all those things can't be kept straight unless the eye of that portion does their job.
And the other shout out I want to give is actually to Sarah. because it was a day or two after this incident. I show up randomly at your house, knock on the door. I need you to sign this permit to search for a car. And I'm sitting in your kitchen, and I realize that you're about to cry. Nobody's happy. Everybody's sad. And I think I said to you, I'm not going to make any promises that I can't keep, but we're going to do the best we can for you and for Tyler. And I still say that kind of thing to this day. I don't make promises to people that I cannot make. I will do the best I can for you.
And you did it.
We did it.
Terry, you got anything?
Yeah, I just would like to say that I know that in the last year or so, for a multitude of reasons, I know that there's been a lot of bad press and a lot of bad media about law enforcement, which to begin with is absolutely ridiculous. But having witnessed firsthand the job that you men and women do every day, it just makes me sick when I hear people talk about defunding the police or any of that nonsense. Go ahead and defund the police and see what kind of chaos society would go into. So, I've thanked you guys up and down, and we'll never be able to thank you enough for the jobs that everyone did, everyone that was involved. But for the people that are watching and listening, if there are people around you that make comments, correct them, is what I would say.
Mom?
Well, like really what he said, like there's no words. There's nothing I can do in the rest of my life that will thank you guys enough. I can bring over snacks like I did.
Yeah, you and the little guy brought me chocolate chip, if I recall.
I think it was peanut butter, especially for you, wasn't it?
It might have been, I don't know.
Or maybe you were the oatmeal raisin.
It didn't make any difference.
I don't remember. But
I ate them.
Yeah.
I brought them over a bunch of snacks after this first trial. But I do. There's no way I can thank you guys for everything you do. Not only for me, not only for my family, but for everybody that loved Tyler, and for everybody who loves any of the victims. Because again, I know we're talking about Tyler's case today, but like we've pointed out, it keeps happening, and you guys are still out there, and you're still giving that same effort for everybody, and it's amazing. I'd also like to say that the work that you guys did, all of you guys, all of Metro Homicide, all of the South Bend police that were involved too, county, I don't know that county, other than the ones that were on Metro, the prosecutor's office and all of that, all the work that you guys did, were able to get 87 years for Sir, 93 for Presley, and 10, which was a plea deal for Caleb. So, it's not closure, but knowing that they're not going to be able to come out and hurt anybody else feels good.
Well, I can say for me, and I think I speak for all police officers, it's an honor and a privilege. It has been for me for 45 years. It's been an honor and a privilege to be a police officer, even though you hear the bad things. I've never once bought into them. I don't believe them. I don't care, to be honest with you, because I know what we do and we make a difference. And if you care, this is what you do. It's a tough job, but you got to be tough to do it. And none of these girls expect extra accolades. There's no police hall of fame. There's none of that. Just do it for the right reasons. Again, my name's Tim Corbett. I own Corbett Investigation Service. You can get a hold of me at 574-229-8115. I'm still doing homicide cases for families that hire me. So that's kind of my little commercial right there. This whole focus is Tyler Hurtle, his mom, Terry, and all the good work that police officers and civilians did. Again, thank you for allowing me to be a policeman.